Well, joining me now is Michael Fauntroy, Associate Professor of Policy and Government, Director of the Race, Politics and Policy Centre at George Mason University. Michael, is the first of two debates tomorrow night. What are you expecting to see?
Potentially a lot of chaos. One of the things that former President Trump wants to try to do is show that President Biden isn't up to the job, and that will require him making things a little messy. Now, he made some substantial mistakes along these lines in 2020 and ended up creating an environment in which President Biden had exceeded all reasonable expectations for how he would do. I'm not sure that this will be any different, but former President Trump is wary that if he oversteps, he'll end up making a big mistake. So I think it'll be chaotic at some level. And if President Biden is able to keep it on policy, which is what I think most voters need, then I think we could be in for a pretty interesting and serious discussion. I really do believe that the lack of an audience is going to change the energy in the room and hopefully give us something that we really need.
I heard earlier today, Donald Trump's microphone can be muted if he goes over time or if he gets particularly boisterous, but the point was made that Joe Biden will still be able to hear Donald Trump if he's trying to speak over Biden. How do you think that might impact Joe Biden as he tries to get his points across?
I think that depends on a technical piece and a sort of debate prep piece. The technical piece is, to what extent are there speaker monitors around them that can allow the language to come not just through the microphone, but through the speaker and into their ear? If that happens, then that could potentially be a problem. But if President Biden, and this brings me to the second half of this, is focused on the questions and the topics, he ought to be able to block out President Trump's voice in his ear. And if he can do that and just stay on point, I think he'll be fine.
Just how crucial are these debates in swaying voters?
In some respects, they're too crucial, and in other respects, they're not crucial enough. I'm a critic of these kinds of events because I just don't think that they tell us very much about either candidate in terms of what they stand for. Too often, they're much more about theatrics and looking presidential and not actually being presidential. Decisions aren't made in anything that resembles what you have in these conversations. So in that respect, they're not particularly useful. Unfortunately, though, most voters put too much energy into how someone does in a debate. And if they think somebody does well, they may give that person their vote, notwithstanding the fact that how someone does in a debate has nothing to do with how they might do as president.
What sort of topics do you think will be the main focus during the 90 minutes of this debate? We know immigration's a major issue, the economy as well. Is there anything else that you're thinking could come up?
I'm expecting there to be some questions about the Middle East. Israel, Hamas is certainly going to be a topic. And I think that if there's any fairness to this, there's going to be some questions about President Trump's record while he was in office. He had an advantage in 2020 in that he didn't have a record on which to run or defend. This time around, he does. And it'll be interesting to see if he's asked about any of those things, up to and including efforts to overturn the 2020 election, the January 6th insurrection, and everything that's happened since. So I think there's a lot to chew on, so to speak.
It'll be interesting to see how things play out. Thank you so much for joining me today, Michael. Michael Fauntroy, Associate Professor of Policy and Government, Director of the Race, Politics and Policy Centre at George Mason University.